What's up, guys? Back with part 2 of my review of Batman Caped Crusader Season 1. If you missed part 1, it's up there in the corner. We're going to break down the spoilers for episodes 6 through 10. So if you haven't checked those out yet, back out now because I'm about to break down all of it. What a difference a second half makes. I thought this thing really started cooking with that Harley Quinn episode halfway through, but episode 7 kicked things up a notch to be its first great installment, and then they rounded things out with that Two-Face arc at the end of episode 8. I stand by everything I said in that first video, but overall I think the show had a lot more to say than I first gave it credit for. Before I get to my overall thoughts on the show, let's go through each episode, because for as good as this thing got, it was not without its faults, which brings us to episode 6. Honestly, this and episode 8 with the kind of Wednesday Addams version of Nocturna were the show's big jumps into the supernatural, and I thought they were kind of the show's weak spots. They both serve a thematic purpose, but it's odd for a show that's relatively down to earth to randomly go, oh, and by the way, we have ghosts and energy vampires. Isn't that cool? And I'm over here like, can I get back to the hard-boiled detective show? Because that's the good stuff. Anyway, then we get episode 7. A criminal puts out a hit that seems to be directed at Jim Gordon, so Barbara and a small group of GCPD officers have to try to keep him safe by getting him to the outskirts of Gotham. The whole thing kicks off with Deadshot showing up out of nowhere, which, by the way, I love just how many DC characters are packed into the margins of this show, if you pay close enough attention. Then we get a group of hitmen showing up led by Kevin Smith creation Onomatopoeia, who was really funny as a hitman. Lot to love about this episode. It was the first that made Gotham feel like a fully realized city with its variety of locations. I appreciated the philosophical differences Jim and Barbara have towards how they should handle crime, and that long, intense fight sequence inside the model house was excellently done. I always appreciate when a fight scene ends with the combatants just falling down in exhaustion. It makes it feel real. Episode 8, it's the carnival stuff, but we finally get the acid bit with Harvey Dent. And episodes 9 and 10 are Harvey's fall from grace and his one-man revenge tour against Rupert Thorne and the mob. There's always a ticking clock whenever a show or film introduces a pre-accident Harvey, and while I mentioned last time I found it odd that he was presented as kind of scummy before the big supervillain reveal, I thought they did a good job of having him choose to do the right thing right before it literally blows up in his face. Two-Face is one of those characters we've seen so many different interpretations of over the years. I liked how there were subtle nods to other character quirks we've seen over the years, like his obsession with the number 2 and his struggles with DID. And while it overall resembles what happens in the third act of Dark Knight, it actually went to a place I wasn't expecting. Which brings me to my final thoughts on the season. While it's far from perfect, I think Bruce Timm pulled off something incredibly clever with this show. For all the attention given to it resembling Batman's earliest days, the show actually addresses 3 of the most common modern criticisms regarding the character. The first is whether or not Batman should kill, and we see what it would look like if he did with Harvey's chaotic rampage. I thought it was a brilliant masterstroke to have another former voice of Batman hide in the shadows and rave about justice while he tries to take down Thorne. But for all Harvey did in episodes 9 and 10, he didn't actually change anything. Thorne is still in power, and the corrupt GCPD officers were emboldened to further abuse their authority and gun him down. Batman is given the opportunity to do the same with Flash, but chooses not to, showing Barbara and Jim that he's a true force for good, rather than just another vigilante like Harvey. The second is the idea that Batman is sometimes written as being too infallible. Longtime fans likely remember the term Bat God from Grant Morrison's run. But this version not only has a personal character arc throughout the season, you're damn right I cheered when he finally called him Alfred, but this is a Batman that isn't beyond making mistakes. He ends that first episode by openly admitting he screwed up. He's unable to stop Harvey's downward spiral in episode 9, and fails to save him from being killed in the finale. He's always going to be a competent character, but it's way more interesting when failure is on the table rather than seeing him succeed every time he puts on the mask. The third isn't as explicitly stated, but it's sprinkled throughout the season the closer you look. Caped Crusader is the first Batman adaptation in a while to argue in favor of Bruce putting on the cowl and being Batman. Think about it. There have been countless think pieces over the years about why Bruce would actually be doing more to help Gotham if he was just using his wealth rather than beating up criminals while dressed like a bat. And the Nolan, Snyder, and Reeves films all agreed on the idea that being Batman probably isn't the healthiest way for Bruce to handle the trauma of losing his parents both physically and mentally. But throughout the show, we see Bruce try to improve the city with his money as Bruce Wayne. He's the top donor to the city's orphanage, he's building affordable housing neighborhoods in Gotham's suburbs, and he publicly backs a politician looking to better the lives of Gotham's lower and middle class through projects like improving mass transit. But for all his efforts, none of his attempts managed to stick. Organized crime bosses like Thorne have ensured they've got politicians in their pockets regardless of who wins an election. The mob has paid off so many cops that both they and the police officers feel like they can act with impunity. A once thriving industrial district is now a hollowed out ghost town, leaving people unemployed. And while I wasn't crazy about the Craddock episode, it did show that there was corruption amongst Gotham's upper class long before Bruce was even alive. It's why I won't be shocked at all if the Court of Owls eventually show up. And because the city has this underlying rot from systemic corruption, it needs someone who can directly target that corruption at its source. And that's something Bruce can't do as a public figure, but Batman can. It's why that final scene of him staring down Thorne is so effective beyond it being a callback to the animated series. It's a statement of intent. Again, I stand by what I said in the first review. This isn't on the level of the animated series, X-Men 97, or even My Adventures with Superman. But it's got the right foundation, and if it keeps that upward momentum going into Season 2, it could be something really special. And since we haven't had a solid Batman-centric series since Brave and the Bold went off the air more than a decade ago, I will happily take more of this. Check it out if you haven't yet, and thanks for watching.